Hello and welcome back to Aspen Talks Health. I am Dr. Nicola and today I'm joined by Dr. Lynn. She is a religious science minister and the program facilitator at Boost Your Brain Power. Welcome to the show, Dr. Dia.
Hi, Dr. Nicole.
So today we're going to talk about techniques to preserving your cognitive function and improving your memory and preventing dementia. Big one for as we age. A lot of people are getting concerned about this dementia happening.
Every time you turn around, somebody's talking about, oh, I don't remember this. I wonder if that's going to happen to me.
Right? Yeah. So that's probably the first, is that the first symptom?
Well, that's a broad question. So you had asked me if there's a difference between just normal aging
Yeah.
or actually going into dementia. So I think that would be a good thing to sort of demystify.
Yes, please.
So what is true is that in the normal process of anybody's aging, cells wear out. We use them up and they wear out, and if they're not replaced by normal healthy cells, then, our skin and our muscles and organs, we don't like to think about our brain aging, but it does. So some of the early signs of age are that we do start to forget things, that we process a little bit slower. We forget a few things. So I just like to go through a list of what's normal, first of all, in case you're concerned. Because, let's face it, we do have a population, a lot of them were born in my generation, and we're getting to that age that we're starting to want to be healthier longer and live a vital life. I mean, here we live, right?
Yeah.
So what's normal is once in a while you make a bad decision. That's normal. Sometimes we miss a bill payment or so. Just one, that's okay. But if you forget which day of the week it is, it's okay if you remember later, right?
Huh.
Sometimes you might forget what word to use. That happens to me sometimes. It's a little embarrassing, but it doesn't mean you have a brain disease. Sometimes we lose things, most commonly our keys. And some of in our age, before all the technology, we don't know how to set our microwaves or record a TV program. It's okay to ask for help. And, if you're feeling a little bit weary about work or, the in-laws coming or don't feel like going to social events, it's okay to be a little tired and worn. I mean, we've been doing it all our lives, right?
Right. I feel that way now.
Sometimes, right? But here's interesting. You might notice that if you start getting really, really rigid about fixed ways that you do things and you have to have it in this certain habit pattern all the time, and if it's not that way, you get really upset. That's kind of normal, but it's not that healthy either. So it's okay to misplace things from time to time if you can think about retracing your steps and then finding them again. So that's all kind of just normal aging. Doesn't mean that you have a brain pathology.
Got it. Okay.
But the Alzheimer's Association does give 10 lists. So if you or somebody that you know is starting to have some of these symptoms, that's the time to start looking into early diagnosis. And it's not too late to do some prevention. But here's some of the symptoms of early onset Alzheimer's. If you have a memory loss that actually disrupts your life. Now that's subjective. What does it mean, disrupting your life? If you're having problems or challenges in planning something or in solving problems, that means the logic's not working correctly. If you're having trouble completing familiar tasks at home or at work, could get fired, right? Or even in leisure. So just familiar tasks that should be second nature. If you start messing up with those, then you need to be a little concerned. If you start getting confused about what time it is or what place it is, that's not good. When you start having trouble understanding visual images or spatial relationships, that part of your brain is becoming impaired then.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you misplace things and you cannot find them at all, you can't figure out how to retrace it, that's a memory problem. When you start exhibiting poor judgment, and a lot of people when they go to the neurologist, one of the first things that happen when they do brain tests is they have you draw a clock, and if you can't even figure out how to reproduce a clock, the neurologist is going to say, well, then what? You probably shouldn't be driving. And that's the point at which a lot of people have to admit that they really have a problem that's interfering with their life and is probably not safe to operate a motor vehicle.
Poor judgment is a tough one because you probably don't know that you're having poor judgment. Are you aware that you just made a poor decision? Is that...
Well, that's the thing. If you don't have the consciousness or the awareness to recognize what you've done that's improper, that's where it becomes, there needs to be some kind of intervention.
Got it. So we had talked prior about myths. So these all can happen, but they probably will happen more so if you have the thought that you're expecting your cognition to decline.
Okay, I love you. We're both holistic healers, so we know about the body-mind connection.
Yeah.
And in this Boost Your Brain Power, also the total brain health classes that we use, it's all about body, mind, emotion, and spirit integration. So I would like to talk about some of the myths of aging.
Yes, please.
When I was young, I was taught that you have a certain allotment of brain cells, and we grow them rapidly as infants and in our youth, and then as we get to be adults and we get our education, and then we kind of use up a lot of our brain cells, and then whatever you have, that's what you have to last the rest of your life, and you don't get any more. It used to be that they didn't believe that brain cells regenerated. Now there's a lot more neuroscience research, and we've got the science to back this up. In a while, I'm going to talk to you about neuroplasticity.
Yes. Good.
But the myth is that we cannot get better. So when Marty and I come to teach some of our classes, a lot of times it's difficult for people to even admit that they have a problem or they need some help, because we'll hear things like, oh, I'm too old for that, or I'm too stupid for that, or I can't learn anything new, or what's the point? What's the use? I'm too old. Now, that's an attitude of giving up on yourself and losing hope. And my partner, Marty, wanted me to really emphasize that the feeling of loss of hope really is mentally and emotionally detrimental, to our ability to actually take charge of our health and learn things new and do much better.
Yeah.
So this is my message of hope here, is that it's absolutely proven that we can improve with age, grow new brain cells, learn new skills, get better. It's proven that we actually get wiser as we get older.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it too.
Good. So you have 3 components really of health, right? We have the physical, the mental, and the emotional. Can we go over, we start with the physical, what happens physically to the body as we age?
Well, probably everybody is pretty aware of that. But as I said in the beginning, it's just a natural fact, and you see it in nature all the time. Things go from a seed, and then they go to a sprout, and then they become full-bloom plant. They flower, they have their apex, so to speak, and then in the fall they start to prune down or dwindle because they've used up their life force. So all of the cells in our bodies go through the same process, except that in human beings we're designed, if our cells are given the proper nutrition, oxygen, exercise, stimulation, that we're designed to continuously regenerate ourselves, including the brain, including the heart. So when we don't take proper care of our nutrition, or we don't get enough exercise, or we don't have the right mindset, the cells can deteriorate and not reproduce themselves. So then you see, memory lapses, general deterioration, buildup of plaque in the arteries of the heart, beginning of heart disease, buildup of glucose in the blood and leading to diabetes, which you know about.
Yeah.
Buildup of excess fat in our bodies, and that's obesity. And all of those things, if we don't check it or take responsibility for ourselves, become lifestyle factors that all lead to a gradual degeneration, decline, losing vitality, enthusiasm.
Which probably spirals the cognitive decline even more.
It does.
So if you're not motivated to learn and try new things.
That's true.
it makes it even worse.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the physical plays a big role in the cognitive.
And there's also the thing about just how many accidents do we have over. I was a body worker for 40 years, so it was my job to put people back together physically, but there's emotional and mental components too that have to do with injury and disability. So if you start to lose your balance, then you feel ungrounded, you feel unstable, and then you go into fear, and then your muscles tighten up, right? Or if you don't get body work. And
like how I feel skiing.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So there's balance, there's coordination, there is speed, there's muscle tightening and scar tissue that all leads to decreased mobility, and then after a while people are in walkers, etc. And if you lose that sense of groundedness with the earth, it makes you feel psychologically unstable and fearful.
Huh. Fascinating.
Yeah.
You had mentioned when we talked earlier that there's actually an excess exercise issue, especially at this altitude, that can cause degeneration as well, correct?
Yeah. So probably everybody has heard, I hope, of oxidative stress.
Right.
There's a lot of antioxidant vitamins right now. So oxidation is a normal process in the cells that oxygen actually burns. It's like the windshield wipers, that the rubber gets eaten up and you have to replace them.
Yeah.
That's oxidative stress on rubber or metal. It rusts.
Right.
So cells can rust as well. So when we hyperventilate, like, we use huge amounts of oxygen in order to keep very vigorous exercise at long intervals, and at this altitude when there's not as much oxygen, and also we're up at an altitude where the sun has more damaging rays. All those lead to oxidative stress of our cells. So, where I work part-time in the cardio respiratory rehab at Aspen Valley Hospital, a lot of people have cardiac and respiratory illnesses, and I'm observing that I believe a lot of it has to do with a whole lifetime of living at this altitude under this amount of sunlight, doing a lot of skiing, biking, hiking, all the things that people do here, which are all wonderful, but it all creates oxidative stress in the cells. And when that stress breaks down the brain, then you start going into brain disease.
Interesting.
Or any place. But that's oxidative stress.
Wow.
And there are some great antioxidant supplements, but I'm not going to get into that now.
No, but I do want to just touch on that. Blueberries, get a lot of the goji berries, a lot of these natural antioxidant foods.
Right.
Is what I would recommend to
Yes.
try and limit that as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what happens mentally as we age? We kind of touched on this, but...
Well, you know how computers get kind of congested, when we put too much data and we have too much stored information and we don't clear out our hard drive and we've got duplicates and stuff. Well, in our age, in our information age, I think that people are bombarded with so much data, so much information, so much news, so many commercials, so many dramas and that sort of thing, that actually I'm observing that people just get overloaded, stimulus overloaded, and then there's a tendency to shut down mentally. It's like, I don't want to pay attention to any of this, and you go into sort of like a denial or a suppression. Right? So that's one thing, is just sensory overload. And there's also technology, which also too much technology that changes too quickly with people of my age that weren't raised with all this.
Yeah.
It feels like a daunting task to keep up with it, and then you start to feel stupid. You call on your 14-year-old, to fix things that you should know how to do yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's that, and then the mental self-image. As we let ourselves decline, we look in the mirror, we don't like what we see, and we start judging ourselves. So that's the mind making judgments about the body, and then it goes into, well, maybe it's my character, or maybe I'm not good, or maybe I'm not attractive, or I'm not, the shape that I used to be. So all that negative self-talk actually has an effect. It's your brain telling your body that you're no longer at your peak and that you're no longer good enough. So that leads to a downward cycle mentally
Yeah.
of just not feeling good enough, or comparing yourself to other people. And there's also something about isolation. There's a tendency for older people, if they're not up to par, that they spend too much time at home, or they don't want to see friends. If they can't hear so well, or they can't see so well, and conversations aren't meaningful, they tend to pull back and isolate. And then isolation can get into feeling sorry for yourself, can go into depression. Depressions can go into medications. Medications can have side effects that are detrimental to memory. It's really a downward cycle.
Wow.
So the mind is really superior to the body. This is the religious science minister in me talking now.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but that's my doctorate, is the body-mind-spirit integration. So everything starts with an idea in mind, and then the body picks up on it and says, oh, that's how you want us to be? Well, then that's how we'll behave. So
Right.
even diseases can begin with aberrant ideas in mind or emotions or heart.
I knew a woman that was 85, and she decided that she wasn't as beautiful as she used to be. She used to be a stunning woman, and she literally didn't leave her house for the last 15 years of her life. Would not leave in vanity, poor thing, but like she just wasn't comfortable leaving the house. The way she looked, she just destroyed herself. It's sad.
It is really sad, and it's preventable.
Yeah.
So we work with people with self-esteem. It's part of our holistic program of working with the mind, working with the body, and also the emotions or the spirit.
Yeah.
So self-esteem, positive self-talk, affirmations, that's all part of it.
Was there anything else you wanted to say about how we emotionally age, or did you cover?
Well, I want to talk about fear, and I want to talk about grief.
Please.
So as we lose some of our capabilities, even our beauty or our sexuality or our appeal, people don't look at us the same way they used to. That damage to the self-esteem makes you feel worse about yourself, and so you withdraw. And so there can actually be a grieving process.
Huh.
Grieving my lost youth, grieving my wonderful career because now I'm retired, grieving my great body because I had an injury and I can't, So there's actually a grief component. And then as people get older too, they start losing friends, family members, and then they start to go into fear about their own demise.
Wow.
So grief and fear of death are huge. The older people get, the more that specter of losing their life looms larger. And fear actually, as you probably know, breaks down your immune system. And the very fact of running fear thoughts through your mind and through your heart breaks down your systems, and you actually become more vulnerable to disease.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch to the positive. Tell us about how we can reverse and prevent all of this.
All right. So here's the good news.
Yes.
When Marty and I decided to form our own program that we call Boost Your Brain Power, and we found Dr. Cynthia Green, who's a neuroscientist, a teacher, author in New Jersey, has created these wonderful programs in order to teach people brain healthy and holistic lifestyle enhancement programs. And so she has compiled numerous training manuals, and so we have license to use some of her training manuals in order to teach classes here.
Nice.
So I have a number of skills. My sister Marty has a number of skills that we bring together to, number one, teach classes in how to prevent cognitive decline and prevent dementia, because it is preventable. Perhaps not 100%, but I've got some research here for you later that's going to give actually percents from some well-documented studies of people that make huge percentage of improvements over maybe a 2-year period of time using these evidence-based scientific methods of cognitive training and dementia prevention. So yes, again, do have hope, do be inspired, do keep on, do feel well about yourself, and do learn some brain training.
Can you share some techniques?
Sure. So the Total Brain Health Program, like I said, is a 3-pronged blueprint. And when we work with people's minds, in the cognitive area in our classes. We give them some science-backed evidence of, what's true about brains and science and memory.
Yeah.
And we give quizzes too, just to test them. We have a number of different exercises that we do because it's been proven that on the mind, body, spirit pyramid, that the emotional or spiritual inspiration comes from socializing with other people. It's the opposite of isolation, which tends to lead to less depression, and people feel like, oh, there's other people that are learning just like I am, and so they work off of each other and they build each other higher.
Nice.
So it builds self-esteem and group rapport and socialization. That's brain healthy.
Nice.
So we have them do skits, we have them learn poetry, we have them memorize shopping lists, we have them, play games with each other. And all of these are scientifically backed exercises that in every class that we teach, there's going to be something for the body, about neuroscience or exercise or nutrition or breathing, something to help the body, and then all of these cognitive exercises to stimulate the brain. And in every one, there'll be 1, 2, or 3 what we call memory builders. So it's a different practice along a theme of the class that builds its memory strategies. I didn't even know there were memory strategies, and I was doing them.
I like it.
Like repetition or saying, Dr. Nicola, it's nice to meet you. It's like, well, thank you, Nicola, and just repetition is one thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different little tricks that you can learn. And once we give you a whole bunch of strategies, then you can pick your favorite ones and continue to use them.
One trick I learned was that to use your opposite hand to brush your teeth.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want to take it further, stand on one foot while you do it. Just so that you're making your brain have new pathways.
That's neuroplasticity.
I was just about to say, can you talk about neuroplasticity?
Sure. So that is a nice strategy. Actually, as trainers, they give us some things like wear your watch upside down for a month. So you have to learn how to see things differently.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm learning all kinds of new things.
That's an interesting one.
But let's talk about neuroplasticity. Actually, that's one of the things that we do as an exercise. We put this long word out, neuroplasticity, write it on the board. Go, all right, how many smaller words can you make out of that? And one of our students took homework for a week. He found 72 words out of that one word, neuroplasticity.
Wow, that's impressive.
So that's a brain training. So what it is, it's also called neuron plasticity, and a neuron is the name of the brain cell itself. Plastic means that it can change form, it can be reformed, right? Okay, and so this relatively new research finding says that we can build new brain cells in places where maybe there has been damage. Let's just say that there may have been a brain injury, a concussion, traumatic brain injury, we call it TBI, okay. That kills nerves in a certain area, or a stroke that kills brain cells. So you've got like a dead space in your brain. So the natural tendency of nerves is, well, let's sprout some new connections over here or over here or over here. So they actually carve out new territory and build more connections, kind of like a detour. But it's more like a tree. If you chopped off the one of the pieces of the roots, and then it grew new fibrils, our brains do the same thing. So the way that we use the neuroplastic principles in here is we keep giving people different ways to do things, new challenges. Like Marty and I are going to have to learn poems from Shakespeare. People have to learn charades. We're going to have to do, some mocking up of movies like you're doing here. Things like, I don't usually do that.
Right.
But if you learn new things, you actually grow new brain cells, and then that creates a reserve, a backup storage of brain cells, so that if something does happen to kill a few brain cells, maybe you go on a alcoholic binge for something and you burn 20 million brain cells, then you've got 40 million other ones that you've built in reserve because you've learned a lot of new skills.
Interesting.
So it's a way that you can be proactive of building your brain up so that it has an adaptive way of working around whatever damage we might do.
Very nice.
Isn't it?
I wonder if music would probably be a good exercise, learning a different instrument.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably great for your brain.
So I'm going to do a plug for Dr. Brooke Allen, who's the neurologist, Roaring Fork Neurology, and we took one of these classes from her, and she, in one class, would introduce us to art, a different kind of art. In another class, she had people come in and do musical instruments. So Marty started learning ukulele.
Yeah.
All right. What I did with this to build my brain reserve is I'm not really good at numbers. See there, I just did a negative self-affirmation. So I started, studying finances and accounting and investing. So that requires me, to have to think about money and long-term planning, which is not my go-to, but I've become much more skillful.
I love it.
Yeah.
So helpful. So we just have 1 minute left. It goes so quickly, I know. But is there any final thoughts, or how can people find you?
Well, let me give you a little bit of this research, okay?
Please.
When Dr. Green started her Total Brain Health program, it was based on 2 research programs. One is called FINGER, and that's an acronym for a 2-year Finnish Geriatric Intervention Study to Prevent Cognitive Impairment and Disability. So these people studied participants with a lot of different modalities, and in conclusion, the people that were treated had an 83% improvement in what's called executive function.
Excellent.
Making decisions and carrying things out. 150% higher score in the speed of processing.
Wow.
And 40% improvement in memory task performance.
Fantastic.
So the conclusion was that the FINGER study is at the forefront of the international collaborative efforts to solve the clinical and public health problems of early identifications of individuals who are at increased risk of late life cognitive impairment and they were developing intervention strategies to prevent or delay the onset of cognitive impairment. So that's what we're doing.
I love it. When should people start with this? I mean, do you wait till you're 60 or 70, or is it better to start at my age, around 40?
Well, the higher education that you have, the more brain cells you've built, and so you're putting your bank account at an increase for later on. But it's never too late to start learning new skills.
Yeah.
Our programs, our Total Brain Health classes, are designed for people that are 50 and older that are still cognitively healthy.
Okay.
Okay, this is not people that are already in dementia or Alzheimer's.
Got it.
It's people that are just over 50 that want to stay sharp and get better.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Prevention is the key.
Prevention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dia. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Also, you too. Thank you for having me. This was great.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for all your wisdom.
So you were going to ask about these classes. Can we just put something on there?
Yes, I will add to aspentalkshealth.com a list of Dr. Dia's classes that she has available. Also, May 8th and June 26th, Wednesdays.
No, until
eight
weeks.
Every Wednesday from 3:30 till 4:45. So I will put up her contact information so that you guys can attend these classes. And thank you again. Such a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks for